I want to thank both Daniel Kosharik and Meredith Davison for inviting me to the History Museum to talk. And I didn't know about Creative Mornings, and I will certainly be coming back and looking forward to them. So I've been photographing at the Scottish Rite Temple off and on since 2013. And it is the jewel box of a theater that was built in 2012. Meredith asked me, how did I get started with this project? And I used to teach at the University of Art and Design, and the Masons are very supportive of education. And in fact, some of the first public schools in this state were started by the Masons. They were parochial schools, right? Catholic region. And prior to that, and so I took my students there, and I could unleash them into this building that was like a Wes Anderson film set. You know, it's completely arcane, and they never threw anything away, and it's just this incredible environment. And then I could find my students and help them. Okay, so this is a student photograph. And while I was there, I looked up and I saw 76 backdrops up in the ceiling. And yeah, 76? So yeah, 76 backdrops up in the ceiling, and the building just seeped into my soul. And I just kept going back every semester, let the kids run around. And it's like stepping back into time where the rigging, these are the rigging, everything's counterbalanced, and then there's the backdrops, you can fly them up and down. Okay, so that's how that works. And I thought, well, someday I should do a project here. But actually at heart, I'm a studio artist. I just stay in my studio, work quietly, and then every once in a while have an exhibit, right? So I put it on the back burner. Then the building went up for sale. And it's 100 years old, and I couldn't imagine what was going to happen to those backdrops if it was a yoga retreat center, a hotel, or a conference center. So I approached the Masons with the concept that I would essentially create a catalog of the backdrops so they would have a historical record. And I also thought I would give those photographs to the state archives. So they have a historical record of what was in this building before it was changed. And in exchange, I asked the Masons who were in charge of the building at that time if I could just photograph my own work, artistic work, using the painted backdrops. And so I got a location agreement, and I started working. Okay, this needs to raise up just a little bit. I don't know, okay, we'll just fly with it. So why these backdrops are so valuable is that they represent a historical tradition of scenic painting that dates back to the 17th century, okay? And most scenery is painted over immediately after the production is finished. You reuse the backdrop, you reuse everything. You know, everyone's on a tight budget, you just paint right over it. And in the San Francisco Opera, there are exceptions. There you paint sets to last for 25 years. And you might exchange them for the Opera House in Chicago. If they're doing Carmen, you trade sets. Sometimes you do that, but basically, theatrical art is ephemeral, just like the performances. And that's why these are so rare, because they're 100 years old. Wow. Okay. And they've been continually used, and because the Masons have taken such good care of them, they are well preserved, and we also have a dry climate. Okay? And there have been no leaks above in that ceiling. Okay, so this is a leg and cut drop backdrop system, and what was special about it is it allows, this again dates back to the 17th century, maybe even a little earlier, and it allows you to have a sense of depth in a very shallow space. And over here, this is called a lighting board, and all those little knobs control the red, blue, and white lights that are on the floor and in the ceiling. So I learned how to run that board so that I could do lighting design for each of the backdrops as I was photographing them. Okay, so I had to do lighting design, and then it's just straight catalog shots, just pretend they're a bunch of shoes, okay, next pair of shoes, So that's basically was the documentary project. And then I could do my artwork, So that's how it started out. And then in doing the artwork, the big question for me was how to respond to this, to the situation, And I started with what came naturally to me, which is still lives. And you have to, mind you, this is not what the backdrops are intended to be used for. I'm having to look at these backdrops and figure out what to do with them. Okay, so since it's theater after all, I decided to explore figurative possibilities, and here I'm making a play on Victorian sensibility, but with gender ambiguity. Okay. It's actually a woman, Dana from Verve Gallery, you may know her, but her fabulous biceps are because of the lighting too, And she's a good sport. And then this is my photo assistant, Clifford Shapiro. In the large print you can see the hairy legs and masculine hand, but the challenge here though is it's been to respond to these arcane references that are in the backdrops, right? But somehow make it contemporary. And it's really campy. And the fact that the Masons have never thrown anything away, and John Adams, Mason here, is here to testify to the fact that that building is well preserved, and they have storage of furniture from the 50s, actually from 1910 all the way to the current time. Okay, so I just go running around looking for the right piece and throw it in the set. So that's been really nice. Okay. Another strategy I devised was actually, and I wish our lighting was better, was actually to show the artifice of the theatrical experience. Here, this is called a cut drop. And then I'm showing through to the back wall, which is cement, Okay. Or creating a large still life, which this essentially is. And then this backdrop was never intended to be seen by itself, but rather in layers, but I like its abstract qualities. So this is the back view of the scenery, which you never get to see is from the audience member in the audience with the backdrop flying up. This is called opera netting. So here I'm combining the illusion with the artifice. And then another strategy I employ is to flatten the space by cropping the image in so that the three-dimensional merges with the two-dimensional, and you have this kind of confusing sense of space. Okay, that's okay. The figure animates the space and gives a sense of scale, but perhaps it's not even needed. So here's two versions of the same scene. And these are all questions I have been exploring as I find my path for this visual environment. I'm still working on this, and it's going to take me a while. I'm just, it's just the way it is. So here, Jennifer Bain, who's in the audience here, was running the camera for me while I was up in the fly gallery, running the rigging, the drops up and down for this particular one. And this is a time exposure, so that's why it's so painterly and blurring. But that's actually what you see when you're in the theater backstage as a stagehand. You're seeing things move, and the audience never gets to see it. Okay. So the reason I'm attracted to this situation and really to address Merida's question of how I got there is I used to be a scenic artist. And here I am in my 20s. my life on ladders, okay, in the Bay Area scene shop working on a Chekhov play. I was the resident scenic artist at Zellerbach Playhouse, and then I was a hired brush for the San Francisco Opera and Ballet Companies and Berkeley Rep. Okay. That was my day job. And then in the studio, I was doing exactly the same thing. I would paint backdrops and then set up, stage the set. And then with a 4x5 view camera, which you see in the corner, things have really changed since then, I would photograph it and then strike the set and start all over. So I had rolls of painted backdrops in my studio and would work that way. So what was different, however, is that I painted those backdrops for the mood and the color, but they're essentially abstract. And as you can see, I'm just doing a photography practice based on theater. And this particular piece is at Photo Eye. There's an exhibit there. They're in my gallery here in Santa Fe. And they have a couple of these pieces up right now. Okay, to create a theatrical large-scale set, you start, this is a 16 by 20 inch watercolor. And I did this for Asian director who wanted a Chinese director who wanted an Asian version of Waiting for Godot. Okay, whatever. So I did these kind of Chinese panels with this wood cutout that, but this is the process. You start with a small painting. It has to go through all the approvals with directors and blah, 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 and then you paint it up. Okay. Well, it turns out that the backdrops at Scottish Rite Temple are created in exactly the same way. You start with a small, they had these small watercolors, and then this is it scaled up, okay. This is what their scene shop looked like. And they were painted, all these backdrops were painted in Chicago by the Sossman and Landis Company, and then rolled up, and shipped by rail to Santa Fe. So I'm going to point this out right here because I had the same, in my scene shop at UC Berkeley at Zellerbach, I had the same kind of setup, which was kind of interesting that these traditions last so long. Basically, this slot in the floor right here allowed the backdrop to go down a whole floor or up a floor. So as a painter, you could paint right on the floor level and you didn't have to crawl up and down ladders. That picture I had, I was actually on a frame set, which is a little different. But so these are called paint frames. Okay. And one of the charms of theatrical painting is that it's done quick and dirty, but the artists are so good that they are both efficient and fluid. And if you look at this section, is this little piece right here, which is this right here. And so if you look at it, it's this beautiful abstract painting, and it's all about color and form when you're up close, and it only resolves from the audience point of view. So all theater is a different experience up close. And there's so much material for me to explore that I feel I'm only now getting a handle on it. But however, the artistic response to this project has been put on hold because I'm now involved in a documentary portion. And one of the reasons, let me step aside. So one of the Masons proposed that I do that they do a book based on the painted backdrops they did. And remember, they were just catalog shots. And I said, there's so much more to this story. And not interested in a self-published book. I've done a book before that was done by Chronicle Books, and it's so much work. I said, if we're gonna do this, let me take it to the Museum of New Mexico Press and see if they're interested. And they were. And so now we're involved in this huge book project, and it's very exciting. Okay. Christian Viala, who is, you may know him as the director of the Folk Art Museum, He's writing the essay on how that building got to be built and why it looks the way it is. You know, so he's telling that story. Okay, we will be using a lot of photographs from the Palace of the Governor's archives, our own Daniel Kosharik here. And I just want to point this out because I was walking by it this morning. This is the old horse race track. Okay, so this is still there, but if you ever wondered why that circle that goes between Paseo de Peralta to the post office, that was a horse track. Okay, race track, I should say. Okay, a little more exciting. Okay.
Huge trees?
Since 100 years. They're 100-year-old trees, yeah. So who are the Masons? And Rick Hendricks is our state historian. He'll be contributing an essay. And Rick, where are you? Yeah, he's right here, so you can accost him later. Okay, so he graciously, stepped forward to participate in this project, and we're so excited to have him. And while the building is over 100 years old, the Masons were in the New Mexico Territory much earlier. And Freemasonry will be celebrating its 400th year anniversary in 2017, 400 years. And that's when they know it actually started. It's much older. And Rick has wisely narrowed his scope, however, to the significance of Masons in New Mexico from 1846 to 1911. Okay. One of the early Masons was Kit Carson, and he donated his rifle to the Masonic collection. And I never thought I would be photographing rifles. Okay, so it's amazing how photography takes you into strange places. Wendy Wazoo Barrett, who is in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, is going to write she has written this incredible essay on the all things theater involved with this. She's a Masonic scholar, and as well as she's a scenic painter. And she was brought out to restore the sets, all those backdrops in maybe 2010s, 12, something like that. And so she knows them intimately. In addition, she has a PhD in theatrical arts, so she's a great person. I've learned so much. By the way, this is the paint. She brought out pigment into my studio, and I photographed this. This is the paint that was used for the backdrops. It's hide skin glue, rabbit skin glue usually, and then you use hot water to kind of get it, dissolved, and then you start mixing it. It's just enough binder. You don't want it too shiny, right? It's got to be matte. So this is how they did it, and this is why those backdrops are so intense. It's this, pure pigment. Now, Lisa Pacheco, the editor of the Museum of New Mexico Press, made the suggestion that I have Masons in costumes and doing their theatrical degree work in front of the backdrops for the book. And I went, right, secret society, I wouldn't even presume to ask, but Wendy, being the scholar that she is, approached the Masons, worked with John Adams, who is here, and proposed that we show it from an educational viewpoint, that what were the degree production performances like in 1912. So we're doing a historical recreation of the performances. Okay, not that they've changed a lot since then, right? Okay, and she was absolutely right, because it animates the backdrops. It's what their purpose was. And it also gives a sense of scale. And so we enlisted Masons in our staging. We enlisted Masons. Kristen Vela, who is here, actually is a Mason, and our own Daniel Kosharik came in and helped us out. And then you can see I'm using some of the stage devices. You know, I'm showing a little bit of that stuff here and there. Okay, so we got to work, and Wendy came out. And Wendy was the stage director for historical accuracy in terms of costumes and content. And I'm creating narrative tableaus which illustrate the individual degrees, okay? And again, we have friends. We have Walter, who's here, who's a sculptor. It shows a Turner Carroll gallery. It's been a great, fun thing. My cousin's in the background, okay? We have, you know. So at any rate, as I'm gonna read a quote from Wendy. I wish she could be here, actually. The Scottish Rite offered 29 degrees for the purpose of philosophical exploration. Similar to a series of morality plays, the lessons of each degree could be expanded to include additional scenes, geographical locations, and subplots. Every degree functioned as a single play. Okay. Most of the costumes are over 100 years old. Because, right, they were brought in at the time of the building, and they actually had some that predate the building, okay? And this is the wardrobe room, okay? And I'm not gonna go into detail on the documentary project and what these all mean, because I'm going to leave that for the book. We want to do this all again when the book is out, and so I don't want to spoil things ahead of time. But I do want to say that because of my experience in the theatrical world, this is all theater, okay? And it's collaborative and everything. So we got the writers who, you know, are at it, and I'm learning things. We got the Masons and their full support for this book project and opening up their hearts and their history to us. And then we have, here's Jeff, who's a Mason, John, who's a friend and a local carpenter, and then Mark Petrick, who worked with me as a photo assistant, a model, and a stagehand. Okay, and this is what theater's like. So I just kind of popped right back into that world. And then this is a photograph. Mark is actually a colleague and a fellow photographer. He's sitting right here next to Walter. And he took this photograph of me. I just want to show you a couple images of the process. So I shoot tethered, and there's a digital camera, not the view camera. And to the right is John, who's waiting to see the pictures I took. So he could have immediate look at what he's doing and figure out facially what to do different and know what's going on. So it's a good feedback for the models. Here's another shot that Wendy took a little bit more intimately, where you can actually see on the laptop, I'm seeing what's happening. So I can pop up and down the ladder, see if it's in focus, what's going on, and make adjustments, lighting, all at the same time, which is the greatest of luxuries. Compared to the old day. That's Brad Wilson, a local photographer, shows at Photo Eye. He's in the assassin's cave holding a rubber knife, okay, with a stuffed sheep. Okay, yeah. Okay, so there's stories. There's wonderful stories for each one of these degrees that you'll have to get the book to read about it. And that book is coming out in 2018. It's going to take us a while. Okay. All right. And then Wendy is the one who tracked down these original, I told you she's a scholar. These are the original paintings that were used to do the backdrops, okay? And I'm going to show you this next one. So we're going to go back and forth. Here's this little, it's about 16 by 20 inches. Okay, here's the full set. This is Walter again. Oh, Walter, you're so good. And then this is Peter Ogilvy, who's sitting right here, who is helping me as he's a local photographer of note. It shows that William Siegel, rather. And he was helping me actually as bringing in a colleague. Like, it's so good to say, okay, am I doing this right? Should I be doing this different? You know, and Peter knows so much about lighting. So Peter was helping me, and then he put on costume. Okay, so let's go back and forth just so you can see this translation. Ba-ba. Isn't that fun?
That's terrific.
Mm-hmm. And then George Watson, a Mason who's consulting with us on the history part, found in a cardboard box up in a top shelf somewhere a bunch of glass plate negatives and slides. So Kristen and I beat it over there, and Daniel Kishart came in, and we went through all this material. It's now here at the Photo Archives, and we're sharing it. And these are glass plate lantern slides. These are lantern slides, so they would have been like a slideshow we're doing today, taken by Jesse Nussbaum, who was a photographer and a Mason, okay? And they were used actively, and I want to show you, here's his picture up here. So they're very much like the catalog shots I was doing later, and I didn't even know about these. And so look at that camp scene upper right, and here it is, okay? So you can see how these are continually used over so much time. Here's John Adams, who also worked as a model for me. And I want to show some of the, you know, the actual mechanics of the theater in some of these shots, and not just have it all straight on. Okay, and then I was invited to do just do shoots of 15 minutes before each of the degree performances during the actual reunion of the Masons. And so this is from that. These are Masons who are amateur actors, right? You know, these are, you know, accountants, lawyers, and whatnot, dressed up. And so I could shoot for about 15 minutes. I couldn't control the lighting or anything, but I just wanted to give you an idea what the actual looks like. And then why this is a challenge for me, because now I'm doing the part of it that's documentary. I'm learning about the sets that before I was just doing straight. You know, I was just looking at it with fresh, innocent eyes, not even knowing the context. Now I know the context, so what's going to happen when I go back and do the art part? I don't know. Okay, so that'll be interesting. But on a really final note, this is the last slide, things have changed for the better since the days of the for sale sign, okay? The building came off the market because there was new leadership, John Adams being one of them. He's in the back, you can talk to him, his hand is there. And because of the new leadership with the Masons who came in and took over running the building, they took it off the market, and they're making it pay for itself. So they're opening it up and bringing this, with all its anachronisms, into contemporary times, by usages such as a film set. This is Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. This is for an Afghan wedding, okay? The upstairs, Moorish Revival architecture, of course, it was a hotel lobby in Kabul, you know? So look at the movie and you'll see the temple. But so they also offer it to, you know, Santa Fe performances. I'm sure some of you have gone to concerts there anyway. And so it's open for rent, and all these different groups. It's like the center of a spider's web, because all these cultural groups all over the region are using it and beyond, okay? And so it's all a happy story, okay? And that's it. Thank you.
Wow.